you guys for joining us. I think there's a couple more people still coming on, and hopefully we'll have a few more jump on. But appreciate you guys joining this webinar. Do any of you have any experience with, you can just do by a show of hands or in the chat box, with investing in real estate or underwriting deals, that sort of thing? All right. We're going to talk a little bit today about being able to uncover what the highest and best use of different types of property is. And we're mostly going to be focusing on Boise just because they have a really robust zoning code, and it makes it really easy to underwrite properties and to see what those possibilities are. But there's a lot of different cities and towns and municipalities that have different rules, different ways of doing this sort of thing. So I want to dive a little bit into just the definition of what the highest and best use of a property is. And the example I like to use, if you're familiar at all with Boise, kind of between the university and downtown Boise, there's an old neighborhood there that's kind of tucked in behind the Winco near Front Street. It's right in the heart of downtown. Everything surrounding these little houses are apartment buildings and office buildings. And every once in a while, one of these little houses comes onto the market, and a lot of people feel like the houses are overpriced, but they're not priced based on the house being there. They're being priced based on the highest and best use of the property. And a lot of times, those little teeny properties are zoned for very high density, either through multifamily or for retail or something like that, which means that the highest and best use of that property is not as it sits. It's not a single family house that you might buy and fix up and rent out. The idea is that somebody at some point is going to tear down that house and they're going to build an apartment building or something that's going to produce more income. And so that's the highest and best use of that property. And the city of Boise, where we live and do most of our investments and work with most of our clients, has really put a lot of effort over the last couple of years into getting into the zoning code and making sure that there's opportunity for people to come in here and not only provide more housing for people, but for neighborhoods to flow better than they do and to have more mixed use. And by mixed use, I mean living in a neighborhood where all of the basic necessities that you need are nearby. There's a small grocery store, there's a cafe, there's a space where you can go work, those sorts of things. And so Boise's integrated a lot of those designations into their zoning code where they didn't have them before. So that being said, the most common residential zoning in the city of Boise is R1C. And up until last year, R1C was rated as a density of 8 units per acre. And so that means that you couldn't build more than 8 units on that 1 acre of land. Well, the city of Boise, in redoing their zoning code last year, they actually bumped up the density of R1C to 12.4 units per acre. And essentially what that did is it made nearly every residential lot splittable. So you could split off part of your land and you could build another house. You could sell it as a lot and let somebody else build a house there. You created more opportunities for people to have a different use for their property. So obviously you're not under any obligation to split your lot, but it creates an opportunity where you could if you wanted to. But for investors, it also creates opportunities for people to go in and look at investments in a different way. So if you're looking at a single family home a year ago that was on, say, 0.18 acres, that house had to work all on its own as an investment if you were looking for an investment. So there had to be equity and probably some cash flow in that deal in order for you to make it work, because you couldn't do anything else with that property. Well, that's not the case any longer. A lot that's 0.18 acres in Boise can theoretically be split into 2 lots. And so now you could buy that one house, fix it up, turn it into a rental, a short-term rental, an Airbnb, and then you could actually sell off the other lot for $100,000, $150,000, or you could build another house on that lot, and then you'd have 2 performing properties on that one purchase that you made. So this new zoning code has created a lot of opportunity. And so I want to dig a little bit into how you can look at what's available and what those resources are in evaluating the highest and best use of any property. So I've got a few things that I want to share with you guys. Alyssa, I don't know if you can change
Yep.
Yeah, so that I can share my screen, please.
I will do that right now.
All right, I appreciate it.
There you go.
All right, okay. All right, so you guys should be able to see my screen there. I want to start with, let me get this. menu out of the way so that I could see. Okay. So first and foremost, for the city of Boise, they have a really robust zoning page, and there's a lot of different information on here. The zoning code itself is several hundred pages long, but they have a bunch of the different zoning designations broken down into really easy to understand, simple things in here. So you can jump onto this page and look at these different zoning designations and get a really good idea pretty easily of what the opportunities for a lot are. So for instance, I want to show you guys a deal that we just closed on for a client that we work with on Boise Avenue. So this just closed about 2 weeks ago. It's a little duplex on Boise Avenue, really close to Boise State University. Address is 1713 Boise Avenue. So there's a 2-bedroom unit upstairs, and then there's a 1-bedroom unit in the basement, and then there is a garage directly behind it. So it's already split into 2 units, and then this garage could potentially be another unit. But what we did when we were looking at this property is the first thing that we want to do is we want to figure out how it's zoned. So the address is 1713 West Boise Avenue. The easiest way to find out what zoning is go to the Ada County assessor's website. So I have a different property record picked up here that we'll come back to that one. But that one was 1713 Boise Avenue. So you can just go into the property search and type in 1713 Boise Avenue. And eventually it will pull up a record for that property. Let's try this again here. I might have to refresh the page because I signed in a little bit earlier, so I'm going to do that. Oh, of course, this is causing me problems right now. So I'm going to go to a different one. I'm going to use one of the title companies that I use for property records a lot to look at zoning designations. We'll come back to that assessor's page and see if it's back up and running here in a few minutes. So 1713 Boise Avenue. So here's the record for this property. And so it's zoned R2, which is a little bit higher density. A lot of the properties that are closer to downtown or closer to the university have higher density. So zoned R2, and it's 0.14 acres. So that's the size of the lot. So if we go back to the city of Boise zoning designation and I look at R2, you guys will see that there's a summary of what you can and can't do with R2 here. So there's all these minimums for setbacks and for lot sizes and those sorts of things. Something if you don't know what a setback is a regulation saying how far the property has to be from another structure or from somebody else's property. And so these setbacks will say the front entry has to be 20 feet away from public property. So it can't be closer than 20 feet to the street in R2. A garage has to be 20 feet setback. The remainder of the structure has to be 15 feet from any other property. So you have an idea of the setbacks that are required. And once you look at that lot and figure out how much space you have left, once you take those setbacks in, you can look down here at the density. So the interesting thing about this new zoning code in Boise is there's actually only density requirements for R1C, that original one we were looking at, which is 12.4. Every other zoning designation in the city of Boise as of last year with this new zoning code is unlimited density as long as you can meet the setbacks. So as long as you can adhere to those setbacks, you could build as many units as you want on this property. Some of the zoning designations have height requirements. So R2 cannot be more than 4 stories or 45 feet. But this is a little teeny lot, as you guys saw. I think it was 0.14 acres. And so it'd be really hard to put a big structure on there. So the chances of having a 4-story building meeting all those setbacks on that little teeny lot are not very likely. So the reason I wanted to use this property as an example, if we go back to this listing, I'm going to blow this picture up a little bit. You can see there's an apartment right behind here. This is like an 8-unit apartment building, and you can't see it, but directly behind this, there's also a large apartment complex where there's several hundred units. And this little lot It's kind of an island in the middle there. There's probably like a map here of what that looks like. Yeah, I don't see it, but this house is surrounded by apartment buildings, and there's a brand new apartment complex going in right across the street. And so one of the things we talked with this client who's buying it was not necessarily that this property as it sits is the best deal of the century, but there's a very good likelihood that the person who owns this building and the people who own the apartments behind and the ones that are building across the street are going to want to expand those at some point. And they're going to need this piece of land in order to expand. And so if he holds this land, at some point in the future, he's going to be able to partner with those people or sell them the lot at a premium, because this is not the highest and best use of this lot. Having 2 units on a lot with unlimited density that's completely surrounded by higher density, larger structures, it's not the highest and best use of that property. There's going to be a future use for this property that's a much more profitable venture. And so that's the main reason that this client bought this, is that this property is going to provide a little bit of cash flow in the meantime, but it's going to appreciate nicely, and he's going to be able to participate meaningfully in the future in a bigger development project because he holds the key to all the people who have these surrounding properties. So this property's highest and best use is something that he's going to participate in the future. And in the meantime, he's just going to hold this property until an opportunity to develop comes along. So I wanted to give you that example as something that we just recently did. In addition to that, I've got a couple other examples that I wanted to share here. This is a deal that we did with some clients last year on a split level house. And if you're not familiar with what split level is, they're fairly common in Boise, up on the Boise bench, but it's one of these houses where right when you walk in the front door, you have to go upstairs or downstairs. There's no main living space. And a lot of investors like these split level houses because they're very easy to convert into duplexes, into 2 legal units. And so that's what these clients did. If you look at the photos here, the house was actually pretty clean, and some of it had been renovated. There's not a lot of pictures of the basement in here, though. The basement was pretty basic, and you can't tell from the back of the property here, these pictures, but there actually was an external staircase in the back. And so what they were able to do is at this entryway, they were able to wall off the upstairs and have a private entry from the back of the property and turn it into a duplex. And it cost them about $15,000 to do that. And because of the new zoning code, they're able to legally make that a duplex. And so as an investment property, this property fixed up probably would have rented for about $2,500. But by investing a little bit of money and turning it into a duplex, now the entire property will rent for about $3,200. So they've created about 25% higher cash flow on this property by looking at it at a highest and best use of turning it into a duplex rather than just viewing it as it is. And so because of the zoning code in Boise, this probably would not have been able to be a legal duplex in the past. And now it could because of the higher density allowed. But there are a lot of these split level houses that are up on the Boise bench that have been converted into duplexes that some people would call it an illegal duplex, but the nicer way that we refer to them a lot of times is non-conforming, meaning that the property was converted into a different use without getting a permit. But now a lot of those can be permitted. And so it's created a lot of opportunity to go through and have these legal duplexes with higher cash flow with a pretty simple duplex conversion. So there was one other example that I wanted to give before I dove into some other ones, and that is this house on Kootenai. We actually have a client that has this house under contract right now. It had been on the MLS for a while, and it's a cosmetic fixer. The house itself needs a lot of love, but the main reason that he is interested in this property is not because of the house itself. It's because it has a large detached shop, and the pictures on here are not great, but yeah, you can't really tell much from here, but there's a large detached garage in the back. It's about 500 square feet. And with this new zoning code in Boise, you can actually put an ADU in there. Does anybody know what an ADU is? All right, I at least got a couple thumbs up. An ADU is an accessory dwelling unit. So it's like another living unit or another unit on a property where you could have a tenant or use it as an Airbnb to produce income. But an ADU can never legally be split off from the property. So once you have something designated in the ADU, you can no longer have that be its own lot and sell it off separately. It's an accessory to that main property, and they always will be together. And so if you want to sell that property in 5 or 10 years, you're selling the ADU and the house together. You can't split them apart. So that's the difference between like splitting a lot and building another unit. When you have an ADU, you can't split that off. So it's literally an accessory to that main dwelling unit. So we're actually talking with the city right now about getting a permit or the possibility of getting a permit to turn the shop in the back into a separate unit that he can have as an Airbnb and rent that out. So one of the cool things about the city of Boise is that they have a pretty straightforward process for ADUs. And I'm going to back up a little bit more to some of the zoning stuff in just a minute, but I want to show you that they have kind of they have like a one sheet ADU guideline to show you what you can do with ADUs. And so essentially the city of Boise says you can build an ADU on any residential lot as long as you have the space to do it. They basically have to tell you, yes, you can do it and give you a permit as long as you follow their rules. You still have to meet the setbacks. One of the challenges on this one that I was just showing you that we were working on is that this shop, it's actually really close to the property line. And so we're not sure if it can meet the setbacks. So the city has told us that they'll actually make an exception for us if we can prove that garage was built prior to 1960. And it was very obviously built prior to 1960, but we have to find some documentation for that. So we're working on that for our client right now. But these ADU rules, as you can see, they kind of have a little graphic here of what works and doesn't work as an ADU. You can build an ADU behind a house. You can convert your garage into an ADU. You can actually add space onto the back of your house to create an ADU, or you can convert a basement into an ADU. And if you were very ambitious, you could actually dig a basement under a house that doesn't have one and turn that into an ADU. But that would be a great way to throw a whole bunch of money down the drain. But that it's permissible by the city of Boise zoning code. The one thing it doesn't, it might have say in the verbiage down here, but you cannot build an ADU in front of the main house. So the main house that exists on the property has to be the structure that's facing the street. You can't build an ADU in the front. Beyond that, some of these more basic rules, it can't be more than 900 square feet. It can't have more than 2 bedrooms. So even though you could have a really cozy 3-bedroom, 900 square foot house, that's not allowed as an ADU. It can't have more than 2 bedrooms. You can't have more than 1 ADU on a single residential lot. And it has to meet all the residential zoning, has to meet the setbacks. The city kind of has an out here that the design has to be compatible with the existing neighborhood. And so even though they might say you can have an ADU, they still get the right to say what your ADU gets to look like. And so one of the cool things about this new zoning code is up until last year, the city required, if you wanted to build an ADU, the homeowner, the property owner had to live in the main home. And there are also additional off-street parking requirements. With this new zoning code, the city of Boise has done away with that altogether. So you can build an ADU on a property even if you don't live there. They'll give you a permit, and you do not have to provide any off-street parking. As long as you meet those setbacks and you follow the rules that are in the sheet, they will give you a permit for an ADU. And so this has been kind of a game changer for a lot of investors that we work with that own property in Boise. Now, a lot of them, instead of going out and buying a brand new property as an investment, they can actually build an ADU on their existing property and create additional income without having to go out and buy an entire new property. And so then that actually increases their depreciation, their basis in the property, and it gives them a new level of depreciation to write off for their taxes as well. So this ADU thing is a really cool thing, especially if you have one of those split level houses that you could turn into a duplex or have the bottom unit be an ADU. It's a really inexpensive way to create additional income and value in a property. So I'm going to go back to my notes here to make sure that I'm hitting on some of this stuff. So I showed you guys where to find those zoning codes for the city of Boise. So I want to go back to some of those designations. So all of these are our zoning designations are for residential. So you can see there's a bunch of different overlays, but for instance, R1A, it has a fairly low density for the city of Boise. It's only 2 units per acre. And so these are for bigger homes, bigger lots. R1A, there's not a lot of that in Boise. There's some kind of south of Overland, but the main part of Boise doesn't really have much. We have R1B, which is 4 units per acre. So it's a little bit less dense, but the majority of Boise is R1C, at least the residential stuff. And so that's what we generally are looking at. It's 12.4 units per acre. So the simplest way to do this, let's just go back and look at this listing that I have pulled up. So one of the reasons that we were talking with our client about this place with this garage in the back you could turn to an ADU is that it's on a 7,400 square foot lot. And so without pulling up the listing here, a lot is about, or an acre is about 42,000 square feet. And that one was, let's see, what was that again? 7,400. Oh, I did that backwards. Hold on here. So we'll do 7,400. So that's about 0.17 acres. And R1C, the minimum lot is 0.08 acres. And so this lot is actually big enough to split. So if you have one lot that's 0.16 acres or larger, theoretically the lot can be split. It's more complicated than just saying, oh, this lot's big enough, it can be split. You need to have egress so you can build a driveway to another lot, whether that be in front or the side or behind the existing structure. You need to make sure that you can still meet all the setbacks for that new structure, that sort of thing. But this is the first thing that we look at is that, okay, it's over 0.16 and it's zoned R1C. So we know that this lot is big enough to be split. It may not logistically be able to be split, but it's big enough. So we dig in a little bit more. So those are some of the upsides to this lot is that if you looked at this property just as it is in the listing, it needs a bunch of work. The garage is in pretty rough shape. It's not a very big house. There's not really a lot going on here. But if you look at it through the perspective that, okay, I can build an ADU here. I could theoretically split the lot. And then if I can split the lot, I could build another house and then theoretically another ADU on top of that. So all of a sudden, this property that we're looking at, as it is, it's not that great of a deal. But if we're starting to look at its highest and best use, this could potentially be 4 units rather than just one single family home that's small and needs a little bit of love. And so there's a whole bunch of value add opportunities here on paper. We have this main house that we could fix up and make a lot nicer and get reasonable rent out of. It's in a decent neighborhood. We can create a little bit of equity in that house through cleaning up and fixing it. We could put an ADU behind it using that garage. And then if there's room on this other side of the house over here, we could put a driveway down there, have an additional lot in the backyard, and then build another house and another ADU. And all of a sudden we have 4 units that are all producing income rather than just this one. So this is one of the reasons that it's really important that you're looking at properties through their highest and best use and not just what's sitting there. This client hasn't closed on this house yet. We're still doing our due diligence, still trying to make sure that what we want to do is possible. But this house sat on the market for a long time, and it's one of the lowest priced houses in this neighborhood. And I firmly believe it's because a lot of people look at these types of opportunities and don't understand what the possibilities are for these types of lots. They'll look at the house and say it's rough. It's probably priced a little bit high for what's there, and so I'm not interested in it. But if you start looking at it through these other lenses and seeing that, oh, there may be additional opportunity for me to build equity and create cash flow, there could be a lot of other opportunities there for people. Going back to the residential zoning, I want to skip down to this next section of mixed use districts. This is where the city of Boise is really starting to focus on growth. These mixed use districts, what that means is that these zones are built for residential and commercial use. The city wants more. If you guys are familiar with Boise, there's a couple of developments that are like this already. Hyde Park is the obvious one in North Boise, where there's a bunch of homes and parks in this neighborhood, but there's also a few blocks where there's coffee shops and there's offices and there's restaurants, and people who live in that neighborhood can walk and get everything that they want or need without having to have a car. And so creating more walkable and bikeable spaces like that, where people don't necessarily need to get out on the road or on the freeway and drive 30 miles to get to work or to get to the coffee shop, or to go to the restaurant that they like. Having everything close by is really where the city wants to go to help alleviate congestion and create more community feeling. So all of these MX1 or all these MX designations, it's really pretty cool because none of them have maximum density. They all have unlimited density as long as you can meet the setbacks. And so as you go up from MX1, 2 to 3 to 4, the setbacks become lesser and lesser to the point where there basically are no setbacks. You could put an apartment building right up against the street or right up against the sidewalk in these highest density designations. So for instance, you're looking at this MX1, you can see the example they have. There's a townhouse and a little coffee shop or something right next door. But they have setbacks of 20 feet, 5 feet, depending on the side, and the building height maximum is 45 feet, but there's unlimited density and there's no minimum lot size. So once you get MX, it doesn't matter how big the plat of land is, you just need to hit those setbacks, and then you have unlimited density. You can build as many units as you want there. And there's a lot of residential nooks and crannies in Boise that were zoned R1C that are now zoned MX1 or MX2. So if you can find yourself a little single family home that's been rezoned to MX1 or MX2, and maybe it's on a third of an acre, there's all kinds of opportunities for you to go in there and build additional housing or some sort of commercial space or retail space. I want to look at, let's look at MX3 just so you can see the difference here. So MX3, you can see the setbacks are basically zero. You can build a property right up against another property or up against public property. There are some parking setbacks for some of the parking designations, but in MX3, the building height is 70 feet. So you could build a 7-story apartment building with unlimited density in MX3. And MX3 is not as prolific, but there are quite a few MX2 and MX1 designations in Boise where there are just single family homes and opportunities for people to come in and do some cool stuff. And keep in mind, if you buy a single family home that needs a little bit of love and it was say R1 or R2, and now it's been converted with the new zoning to MX, that doesn't mean that all of a sudden you need to build an apartment complex on this lot. It means if you buy that house, you could just build another house there if you wanted. It doesn't have to be as dense as what allows. It just means that those densities are the most that they'll allow. And so you don't need to go nuts and build an apartment building. If you just wanted to build a duplex next door or another couple of units behind, something like that, that's a possibility as well. So there are also, I'll just touch on the concept. I don't want to get too far into the weeds, but there are also overlay districts all throughout the city, and different neighborhoods have these overlay districts. And so a lot of people in Boise are familiar with this HD, which is the historical design overlay. So a lot of the North End in Boise has historical homes that are designated under this HD overlay. And if you're an investor, that can actually, I consider those like a high risk and high reward opportunity. A lot of people want to go in and flip houses in the North End, and they'll find an old house built in 1908 that's really, really rough, and people will pay millions of dollars for these old houses to be renovated in the North End. But what they don't take into account is that this historic overlay district, the people who work for this district, they have the right to get in and approve your materials and your design, whereas anywhere that doesn't have this overlay, they don't have that. And so they'll basically take control over your budget. And it can become very, very, very expensive to renovate those older houses to keep them to period, as this historical design overlay is meant to do. So that's just one. For instance, I'm actually working on a deal with some friends of mine right now that's in the airport influence area. And so even though the property that we're looking at is zoned R2, which has high density, it has this airport overlay on top of it, which actually lowers the density because they're trying to eliminate the density of residential properties that are affected by airport and freeway noise. And so they allow a lower density in some of these overlay areas. So I won't get into all these, but just so you guys know, as you're looking at properties and underwriting your own deals, jumping on here and looking not only at the zoning, but looking at these overlay districts, that's an important piece. And actually, I want to go back and see if we can get the assessor's page back up and running, because it'll show some of those overlays, but it's not happening. Oh wait, it did just pop up, I think. Okay, there we go. So this is just that one on Boise Avenue, but let's do this. I don't have a specific address, but I'm just going to look at Harrison Boulevard, because almost everything on Harrison Boulevard is going to be in that historical overlay. So I want to show you guys what it looks like. Here we go. Look at 1901. So there we go. So you can see this property, it's 901 North Harrison Boulevard. The zoning code is R1C. So that's that 12.4 units per acre, but it's also in the HDO overlay, so the historical district overlay. So we know that this property, any renovations or upgrades or changes to the lot or anything have to be approved by the historic district, which can be daunting. And so that's the same with any of those overlays. You just need to be aware of them. Just as a side note too, this lot is 0.14 acres. And so I know because of that R1C that it needs to be at least 0.16 before that lot could be split. So I know this lot couldn't be split under the current designation anyway. So I just wanted to show you guys what some of those overlays look like. One other tool that's available to you guys when you're looking at deals on Zillow or whatever the case may be, hopefully I've given you an idea of where you can find some of the residential zoning designations and how you can go back through the city website and see what the densities and setbacks are required so that you can underwrite some of your own potential deals. But also, there's a really cool tool that the city has built in here. It takes some effort to dig into this, but this is actually a map of the city that's color-coded by zoning. And so this can come in really handy if you want to just look at a certain area of town because you know a way that it's zoned. And so if we zoom in here, if I want to click on the overlay zones and open up that map a little bit, you can click on any of these and every color is a different zoning designation. So if I click on there, I have to get down to the lot level. So I'm right here on the corner of Main and Whitewater. So it's going to tell me that's zoned MX5. So if I'm looking for properties that are just zoned MX5, I might zoom in on Zillow and just look at these areas. Or you could go 3003 Main. I want to go back into the Ada County. What was that again? I have a very poor short-term memory. 3003. So 3003 Main. I'm going to look at the property record specifically for this property so that I can figure out exactly what's going on there. So it'll tell me when it opens up here. Maybe search again. Okay. It's actually usually not this buggy. It just knows that I'm recording a webinar right now, so trying to make me look bad. Okay. So 3003 Main, you can see this is already a commercial property, but it'll tell you who the owner is. It's owned by Trinity LLC. And it's zoned MX5. It's 1.9 acres. And so just for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to go back to the zoning designations to MX5. It's mixed use downtown. So this tells me that MX5, there are no setbacks at all. And so that building can be built right along the sidewalk. There's some parking requirements. There's no building height maximum. So I could build as tall as I want there. And there's no density. It could be as dense as I want. And since it's MX, that means that could be a mix of residential, that could be apartments, offices, all in the same building. And this, I mean, some of you guys might be looking at this and thinking like, I'm not going to build something like this. Like, I just want to buy a rental property, maybe split a lot off and build a duplex or something like that, which is totally fine. But I just want to give you an idea for the context. And so I bounce back and forth quite a bit between these three pages, between the zoning designation page on the Boise City website and this map, and then the county website. Because the reason that all the zoning designations for individual lots is on the county website is because they're the ones who hold all those permitting records and the zoning records. So you have to have the information from the county on how it's zoned. And then you can go back to the city and take a look at the actual zoning designation for the city. But this map is a really fun tool. I've actually gone back through here and built a bunch of searches out based on zoning. And so I've zoomed in here and selected some of these maps and transferred them over to our MLS system here in Boise, so that I get notifications when properties pop up that are in these residential areas that are zoned with higher densities. So I think this is Vista right here. So I think all this stuff back here is, what is it? I want to say it's R2. So that's R2. So these are a bunch of single family homes, but some of these are on bigger lots. As you can see, like this one's a little bit bigger of a lot right there. Let's take a look at that. 1106 South Shaw. I want to see how big that lot is. So 1106 Shaw, it's zoned R2. So it's over half an acre. So it's 0.539 acres. And I already know that R2 is unlimited density, but it has greater setbacks. But so with this being, if this property ever came on the market as a single family home, it would probably be priced as a single family home, but that is not the highest and best use of this property. It's a half an acre zoned R2. You could probably pretty easily put 16 to 20 units on here, some little fourplex buildings or a small apartment building. One of the cool things about, if you are looking at development like this, if you get lower density, but if you're able to put in, let's say you could fit 20 units on here, you could do that two ways. You could do a 20 unit building, or you could do 5 fourplexes. If you do the 5 fourplexes, there's a chance you might be able to get those fourplexes split into individual lots, and you could sell those off individually to other investors. You can't do that with one building that's 20 units. That's a package deal. And so something else to keep in mind while you're looking at these types of opportunities. But going back to this map, I just kind of gave you an example of how you can look at some of the bigger lots that are in these different designations and just click on it and see what the possibilities for those are. And so if you incorporate that into a search you were doing on Zillow, if you start looking at, maybe in the city of Boise, you set up a search on Zillow, or you talk to a real estate agent and say, I just want to see everything that's under $400,000 that's on more than half an acre in this zip code or in the entire town, then you'll start seeing those listings. And then you can just go back to this map or to the zoning designation and say, okay, this one just popped up. Here's the price. And this is what it's zoned, and that's what the density will allow. And so you'll start to see opportunities for some highest and best use that is not going to be obvious when you just look at the listing or just see it on Zillow in isolation. I want to make sure that I hit on all the topics here that I wanted to. Think I'm probably done with my screen share. You guys don't have to stare at my notes, but I'm going to just take one more look to make sure I hit on all that stuff. Okay. The only other thing that's on here that I didn't really talk about, I just want to hit on real quick, is the cost of building. It probably goes without saying, but the more square footage that you're building, the less it's going to cost you per square foot. If you have a blank lot and you're building an entire new house, you're going to pay a lot more per square foot for that house than if you have one of those split levels and you're just creating some living space in the basement that's already there. So that will be much lower cost. But I would say, speaking broadly, if you're looking at building an ADU from scratch, splitting a lot and building a home from scratch in our market today, if you found an efficient builder, you're probably going to be looking at something in the range of $175 to $200 a foot to get things built. You could find somebody that does a heck of a lot more than that. You're probably not going to find somebody that will do a single family home or an ADU for less than that. And in some cases, it's going to cost a lot more, just depending on the difficulty of getting materials to the back of a lot and those sorts of things. But just to give you a broad idea, something in that range is probably about right for what it would cost to build from scratch. So I want to open it up to see if anybody has any questions or wants to go through an example or anything like that.
Corby, you have a question in the chat from Danielle.
Let me take a look. Thank you for the heads up. Oh, in Canyon County, would these resources be similar? So yes and no. So these opportunities would be similar. Canyon County and the cities in Canyon County, they don't offer as much opportunity for density as Boise is now with this new zoning code. And the Canyon County website leaves a lot to be desired as far as the amount of information is in there. So you could do these types of things in Canyon County for sure. I mean, as you guys know, people are building new homes and apartment buildings everywhere. But the reason I wanted to use Boise as an example is because all the resources are readily available online. If you want to do something similar in Canyon County, it's absolutely possible, but you're probably going to have to call the county or even go down to the county, the assessor's office and ask some questions, because their websites just don't have very much information. If you go to the Canyon County website, you can find who owns a lot. You can see how large the lot is. It doesn't have any of the zoning designations on there. And so you'll have to go to the city or the county to get the zoning designation, depending on where that land is. If it's within city limits, then the city has that information. If it's outside of city limits, then you have to get that from the county. So I hope that helps. But yes, you can do this stuff. You just probably can't do most of it online. You're going to have to be on the phone or getting into those offices a little bit more. Okay. Jesus, very informative. Yes, absolutely. After we're done with this call, Alyssa or I will send a follow-up to you guys with our contact information. And if you come across a property or you want help finding a property and need some help with due diligence, we're happy to jump in and help you take a look at those anytime. So please don't be shy about reaching out. This kind of stuff I think is really fun. So we're happy to help. Yeah, I agree with you. Unfortunately, Ada County and the city of Boise by far have the most user-friendly websites with the most information. And I don't want to just single out Canyon County. You're definitely going to struggle at all the other county websites in the state, and especially as you get deeper into the Lemhi counties and the Clearwater counties and Boise counties. There's just not much information available. It's a lot more legwork. Awesome. Okay. Any other questions, or is there any other topics that you guys want me to jump in and cover before we go? Cool. Okay. So we've recorded this. So if you guys want to review any of the steps here, Alyssa will send out a link to the recording once it's uploaded, and you guys will have our contact information. You're welcome to reach out anytime. One more question from Danielle. Yeah. I'll pop up.
Okay.
Do you know if there's an exam we can take in place of being an angel investor? Example, getting I'm assuming, Danielle, you can correct me in the chat if I'm wrong. You're asking about being an accredited investor in order to participate in syndications? If that's the case, I'm not aware of anything you can do to show that. So there's two terms they use for being accredited. It's either an accredited investor, or some people refer to that as being hey, thanks for popping on. So is that what you're asking about, investing in syndications?
I am, and I keep hearing that there's an exam, but no one can ever tell me where that is, because I hear about the syndicated deals and I get the value, but if you're not accredited, you can't get in. And I earned my 7 in the past. So I was like, well, why can't I just take that test?
You know what? I have heard that that's a possibility. I honestly don't know anything about the process. Let me do a little research, because that would be interesting to learn. So
I'll let you know if I find out.
I'm actually going to ask Robert, who's my partner in our development, because he's been accredited in that same way in the past, and so he would definitely know more about that than I do.
Because is that what you're offering now? I heard you on the Turnkey podcast. I reached out to, I live in Nampa, and I'm just like a self-learning kind of person.
All right.
And I see the syndicated deals everywhere being offered, but don't you have to be accredited for most of those?
For most of them, you do. There are certain types of syndications that you can participate in. They have to be designated with SEC, and they can offer investments to non-accredited investors, but it severely limits the way that they can advertise and recruit those. And so not many people do those, because you can't advertise for them at all. You can't talk about them in public. It has to be one-on-one with individuals. It makes it very difficult to raise that money. And so anyhow, it is possible, but it's hard to find them because the people who are running those are not allowed to talk in public about them.
I know there's a gray area there, and I'm trying to find it. So I'll follow up with you if I don't hear back, because I'm interested in your thoughts on that.
Cool. All right. Yes, I'm going to follow up with Robert too, because there may be a way, if you've been designated in the past, that you can bypass that. I just honestly don't know the answer to that question.
They say it's coming and that they passed it last year, and I've asked a lot of savvy people, and they're like, I have no clue. It's like this gray zone, but that's the legal loopholes. They make it hard, right? You got to find.
It's funny. They're trying to protect people that want to invest their money. And I mean, to a certain extent, I understand. But also, if people can prove that they understand what they're doing, then I think that there should be some exceptions for that. And of course, I'm sure that you're well aware that there are REITs and DSTs and that sort of thing you can invest in that they're less risk, less reward than doing a syndication.
And is that something you guys do?
We don't have anything like that in house right now. That might be something we move into. But are you familiar with those two things? Okay.
Real estate investment trust and
Yeah, you know your stuff. Yeah, we don't have anything like that in house.
I need to be involved. I sound like I do, but
well, we do lots and lots of deals with individuals who want to go out and invest too, and there's lots of creative ways that you can get in the game and invest in individual properties too. And so if you want to talk more about that, then let me know. We could jump on the phone or grab coffee.
Thank you so much. I will.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks.
Sure.
Hey, hi, Danielle. I recently got accredited as an investor, and I think if you go to the IRS site, you can just do a search on accredited investor, and it'll give you the criteria.
You took the exam, Jesus?
No, I didn't take the exam. I qualified under one of the other conditions.
Right on. Okay.
Yeah, but if you're interested, I think the IRS site, just do a search on the IRS site, and it'll give you that.
Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Danielle. And Jesus, we're just as a side note, we're actually doing, I don't know if this is on your radar, but our team is doing a development that we're just about to start. Well, actually, yesterday was our official kickoff to raise funds for development syndication too. So if you're interested in learning more about that, then shoot me an email and I'll connect you. We have a couple webinars coming up and some information I can share.
Yeah, definitely. I'd be interested in taking a look and see what's possible.
All right. Well, thank you guys for taking the time. If you have any questions about any of the stuff, or you just want to chat real estate in general, I'm a real estate nerd. I just love talking about it. So please feel free to reach out and we'll connect.
This is really fun. Thank you for doing this.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for jumping on. We're going to do a couple more of these in the coming weeks, and so we'll keep an eye on your email. We'll have different topics, but we'll definitely be continuing the series. So thank you guys. Have a great day. Oh, you have another question?
Sorry, guys. I actually popped on through Instagram, which was great. So that worked, whatever you're doing, but I didn't sign up for this. So should I email you to maybe get I didn't really sign up. I just jumped straight on.
Yeah, if you don't mind, send us an email and we'll drop you into our workflow that sends the invites out for these.
Okay, thank you.
Cool, you bet. Thank you. Have a great day, guys.